Well, it's estimated globally about 2/3 of workers don't really care about the vision or the mission of their business, and therefore they don't contribute their experience, their enthusiasm, their ideas to creating decent customer service and extraordinary innovation. Today's workforce is probably the best educated in history. Its ideas about management are largely based on concepts created for individual factories in the late 1800s. This is the MoneyMakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight I'm joined by Dave Garrison, who's the Chief Engagement Officer at Profitable Engagements and a YPO member, to talk about the cost of business and unengaged or disengaged employees. The vast majority of people, in my experience, don't really care who they work for. They'll job hop, they'll go from job to job if it pays them 10–15% more, as long as it's convenient to get to and nobody expects them to do too much overtime.
And that's especially true with the millennial generation coming on. So half of our workforce in 3 years will be the so-called millennial generation. And they're looking for a sense of purpose at work. They're looking for engagement. They want to hear their ideas heard as soon as they get there and not wait around for a title or to earn the right to be heard, which is the opposite of baby boomers. So this problem of job hopping, of people who just go to a job and then quit and are blamed for not caring, we've created that for ourselves as executives because we're trained on models from the Industrial Revolution in the 1920s. We talk about objectives, and we talk about vision, and we talk about here's your job position, and we leave the person behind. We don't ask people to bring their passion or their experience to work. We say, you're an accounts receivable clerk, let me know how we're doing on collections.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the purpose of work. Certainly that's the way the baby boomers see the purpose of work. The purpose of work is to grow the profits of the company. If you grow the profits of the company appropriately, hopefully you are rewarded for that. And that is your purpose, is to receive a financial reward for a job of work well done. I'm sorry, but what's wrong with that?
The whole system works on that, and that's great. Most companies work that way, but I'll give you two examples. Gallup research shows that where you have higher level of employee engagements, profits are more than 20% higher than your competitors. In my case, I work with a company that had very poor engagement scores. We worked on communication skills and techniques with every manager and reframed what a manager is. A year later, in a flat industry, their turnover was up 14%. So there's actually profit in engaging people and inviting them to the workplace.
Define engagement, because for many people who have been in a company for 10–15 years, they've risen up to the level of, say, general manager, they've seen it all before. They know how the business works. They pack boxes in the basement. They have been through every single layer of this company, and don't come and tell them how it should work into the future, because they know.
You've been there.
I'm there.
You've been there. But here's the challenge. The challenge is today is not like it was 15 years ago. There are new opportunities today. There are new competitors. There are new challenges in the business. And the further up in the company we go, the less we're aware of what's happening on the front lines. The people who know best about customer service and innovation are doing the frontline jobs. And what we say to them is, come to our work, here's your job, just sit down, shut up, do your job, I'll give you a paycheck, thank you very much. Which is the opposite of being authentically curious. Which is
authentically curious. Now, I like curious. The use of authenticity is, after the word innovation, the word authenticity is the most overused piece of business jargon of this decade. You better explain it.
To me, it means you're being true to who you are and you're recognizing everyone else for who they are.
But you've got to be trained in order to do it.
Absolutely. We don't provide that training.
But it's not authentic, is it?
It is to have the training of the techniques, but you are still authentic yourself. So authentically curious leadership means that you invite the whole person in. So we get confused about skills and degrees versus people's passion and experience. Every single person comes to the workplace with passion and experience. So let me give you an example.
We suck it out of them within a year or two, at best. I mean, most companies are able to do that.
We're very practiced at that.
Yeah.
But there is another way. But imagine if you're sitting, so people say to me, well, they don't have the skill level, I must tell them what to do, or they don't have my experience, they haven't been here 15 years. And so imagine you're sitting at an Orlando Pirates game and you see the enthusiasm in the stands. What if you could capture 30% of your workforce to have the same level of enthusiasm? What would change? What we find is the engaged workers are the ones who innovate. They're the ones who provide the best customer service, the ones who identify problems and solve them themselves, as opposed to the zombies.
Are you suggesting employees should be fans? If you could turn employees into fans of the company in the same way as they're fans of their favorite football team or their favorite rugby team or whatever the case might be, you would have a workforce that's more engaged. Now, that strikes me as quite a high-risk strategy, because the moment you're more engaged in the workplace can become a lot more messy and a lot more complicated. Much easier as the CEO to pass down diktats all the way down to the bottom than have everybody engaged, because now you've got to talk to people.
Absolutely. But as you said earlier, if the purpose of business, if one of the purposes of business is profitability, as you said before, then maximizing profitability actually involves things that are sometimes messy, because the human condition is sometimes messy.
And in the modern company is a big company. It's more often than not a conglomerate. It has got many, many fingers and many, many pies. And it becomes quite complicated to do on any sustainable and meaningful basis. I get it in the startup space, the YPO space, where you've got young and enthusiastic, hungry, passionate entrepreneurs who are living their brands and who are sleeping and breathing every moment of their business. That's easy. But if you are bank CEO number 37 in the 200-year history of a banking group that has done the same thing in the same sort of way for 200 years, that's surely a lot harder.
Is it harder?
I don't know.
Or is it a different mind frame? So if your mind frame is, I must tell people what to do and to answer to shareholders, that's a mind frame. Another mind frame is to say, my job is to set out why we count. Why does our company matter? How is the world different because we exist? To set out what our dream state is and set out the metrics by which we'll measure whether or not we're getting there. And instead what we do is we set up the metrics and objectives and tell people to meet the metrics and objectives. Very different. So here's what we hear from that portion. So in Africa, for example, we have about 90% of the workforce is estimated to be disengaged. So most of those we call zombies. They just show up, get a paycheck, happy to be there. The vampires suck the energy out of the organization.
Yes,
okay?
we know that.
So the question is, when we survey thousands and thousands of what you might call vampires, they say three things. There are three markers. One is, my opinion doesn't count in how things get done around here. It doesn't mean as manager you have to do what they say, but you know what? Since they're living the work, you might ask, what could we do to make things different around here? What can we do to improve customer service? How would you be involved? And assign teams to do the work instead of telling an individual what to do. So that's marker number one. Marker number two is, people are not treated equally around here. There's all different, according to the department and who you are and how long you've been here, people are treated differently, and that doesn't strike me as right. And the third thing is, I want a connection to something greater than myself. I want to see myself, Alphabet or Google, for example, is certainly not a startup. They are unique, but they have a mission and a vision, which is to organize the world's information. So when people say, well, they're in self-driving cars, that's only so they can generate information and organize it. But people understand they're part of something bigger.
Also, people mistake sending out a survey or sending out a questionnaire as engagement. People, if you bother to actually click on the link and go and spend 20 minutes of your time, which is generally your own time after you knock off, filling out the stupid feedback, and nobody ever gives you feedback on the feedback.
Correct.
And you kind of go, well, that was a waste of time.
Right.
It's got to be continuous, and it's got to be, I hate the word, authentic.
Yes, well, it's funny you say that, because we say to CEOs, please don't do a survey unless something will happen as a result. So we've worked with lots of companies, thousands of employees, and we say, when you get the results, don't start making up stories about what the results mean, because you have no idea. The answer to what it means is in the head of the person who filled it out. So the WIN trains supervisors and managers to go meet with employees in small groups to say, what do you think people meant when they answered this question this way? And there you'll get the rich information, and then say to employees, what can you do to change the answers? What would you do? What are some ideas?
I was in a room once with a chief executive who'd got the feedback from one of these surveys and spent 5 or 10 minutes berating the room for the response they gave, because the CEO didn't perceive the problem in the same way as the staff perceived it. And that was the last time that particular group of staff ever got a survey of that kind.
Absolutely.
And immediately the opportunity to change the way things work is gone forever.
Yes, and the other thing that happens is there's a story in the head of the executives that will often say, well, they're unhappy. If they're unhappy, it's only because they're not paid enough. And yet when we do engagement surveys, we find generally fewer than 5% of the responses, open-ended answers, have to do with pay. It has to do with respect, opportunity, being heard.
Okay, here's a mean question, just to finish off with. Do people who work
I've
in
been warned
companies,
about you.
Do people who work in companies know what they want? And I ask this based on another experience where people had looked at the Google experience and said, we need a Google-type cafe.
Right.
And so the company provided a Google-type cafe.
Yes.
And nobody used it because the door was in the wrong place, or there wasn't catering, or whatever it was.
Yes.
And you kind of get to the sense that, hold on a second, all this employee engagement stuff can be a bit of a dead end as well as an executive.
Yeah, that's not employee engagement. So the beanbag chairs and the ping pong table and the catering on Fridays and the beer parties, that's not about engagement. It may be an element. The engagement is defined by the employee. They're all unique in every company. The culture is different.
Yeah, but you've got time to share, give everybody a hug in the morning. You get arrested for that stuff nowadays, don't you?
Well, then don't worry about increasing profits. No time for that either.
But what is there a secret juice? I mean, is there a first step on this journey to engagement then? Because it's daunting, especially for traditional companies in a rapidly evolving and changing world.
I think it's having an authentic, curious leader at the top. The CEO starts there, but it really is providing training and tools for the managers and the supervisors to have these conversations. Because we've trained managers to say, just tell people what to do. And then they see the turnover and they say, oh, I've got the costs of recruiting and the costs of training. Those costs don't really show up on the balance sheet or the P&L. The cost of unemployment never show up on the balance sheet or the P&L, so it doesn't exist. But CEOs will grumble about the millennials or whatever, or they'll see competitors get ahead. There's a company in America called CHG Healthcare, has been consistently ranked one of the top 100 places to work. And they are in a tough competitive industry of staffing. And the way they do it is their strategy is their culture. Their strategy is their culture. And culture can be a strategy if you embrace that your business is about people and motivated people make the profit difference.
What's that quote? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. You get the culture right. Strategy is almost a byproduct as a result.
It is, and it is messy. It's not clean, but it's also very rewarding.
Dave Garrison, thank you very much indeed for coming in. That of course is Dave Garrison, and Dave Garrison is in South Africa talking with the YPO and really making an impact and helping people make an impact in their own businesses. Thank you to Dave Garrison. Thank you for watching. Good night. The third Discovery Financial Planning Summit is taking place on the 29th of May 2017. It features some of the world's industry-leading keynote speakers in the field of financial planning. The summit will address key trends facing advisors in 2017 and beyond. Financial planners have a more pivotal role than ever to play. This full-day event offers you the opportunity to hear how to embrace technology and more effectively connect with your clients, gain insights into global investment strategies, and get a better outlook on markets. Please go to www.financialplanningsummit.co.za to register for the Discovery Financial Planning Summit.